Episode 3, Steve Athey. In December 1986, Steve Athey purchased a record store for $7,000. Nearly 30 years later, Skinnies Records and Steve are still going strong. The road has not been an easy one, however. Skinnies has survived the death of vinyl, the birth of the compact disc, competition from big box stores, online retailers, and digital downloads. Steve has survived a couple of major surgeries and has had to move the location of the store 2 times. The most recent move was done by hand. Shoppers may not always leave Skinnies having purchased something, but most leave with an impression, an opinion, and a story. Steve Athey may have mellowed out over the years, but he still runs Skinnies Records his way since 1987. This episode was recorded on a Thursday at 2 p.m. at Skinnies Records in Norfolk, Virginia. You grew up in Western Maryland.
Correct.
Brothers, sisters?
I have a sister who lives in Ocean City, moved there around college age or so. It seemed to be the thing to do where during the summer, people to head there, migrate there for the summer to, work in various restaurants and things like that. She ended up staying there. She met a individual who she married shortly thereafter, and the two of them have maintained various restaurants throughout the Ocean City area, and doing quite well.
What did your parents do?
My dad worked as a child at the in Cumberland, Maryland, where we lived, as a we worked for Pittsburgh Plate Glass. It was a factory, which everybody back then, their dads worked in factory, one of the many factories. He worked there, got promoted up to some point in time to drive a truck, and then after that, did that for most of the years I can remember. When things started to go south, he ended up buying his own tractor trailer and then became a contractor himself.
Still working for the glass manufacturing?
No, they went under, and that's when he went and did, just driving, long distance. Not like, a week at a time, but more like, daily, 2 days type things.
Did you ever get to ride along?
I did a couple times. He would take me along. It was very enjoyable, but not something I would like. Oh, I can't wait to, in 10 years I can do this too, Dad. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I was too busy reading comic books and and things like that.
Did he have an interest in music or?
Not that much, just as much as a casual, person would. Yeah. Nobody else in the family really was, into music at all.
TV guy?
No, not really. No.
Work,
yeah.
And what about Mom?
Mom, they met during the Korean War. I guess he was stationed in Germany, I guess almost the same time as Elvis would have been, I guess. And they met and got married and came over here.
She was German?
She was German, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so she was like homemaker?
It was, and then I guess 5th or 6th grade, something like that, she got, I believe, a job like driving like a school bus.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle and grandfather had a hand, 6, 7 or so school buses that they were, subcontracting from the Board of Education to drive.
Public school.
And then for public schools, yes. So,
you come from a driving family.
Yeah. They both. So both of them. Mom racked on at least 100-ish miles a day, just driving kids back and forth, and Dad did even more than that. Yeah.
Did you ride in the school bus with her?
Occasionally, like during
she didn't
summer
drive the bus that you took to school.
Oh no,
because you don't want that.
No. Did not. But there again, during the summer, again, I remember, if she would do summer school or something like that, I would tag, just drive along and whatnot. Yeah.
So it's a bilingual household?
Yes. Okay. Interesting. I'll reveal something that not too many people know. So growing up, my grandmother would take care of me, and whatnot. And the two of them would speak fluent German to each other. And they also had a small group of friends who were also from Germany. So when they would get together, always speak in German. Grandma had a rough time, always spoke broken English and things like that. So somehow along the line, I could understand what they were saying. I couldn't speak fluent German, and still can't, but I could tell you anything that they were saying.
So when they got married, your mom's mom or parents, they came to the United States as well?
No, Mom came over with Dad, and then once they got settled, I guess I remember like being like 4 or 5 and Grandma coming over, staying with. She would stay for like 6 months or and then go back over there. So she migrated back and forth throughout most of the time. Then I guess finally, maybe as a teenager or whatever, then finally we're like, okay, you need to stay over here, and whatnot.
Sure.
And along the line, I think like in 7th or 8th grade or something like that, we went over and the family went over and made a trip.
Fun.
To see the remaining members of Mom's family and everything like that.
That's good.
So that was real interesting. Yeah.
What was school like? Did you like school?
Good
student?
It was just public school. There really wasn't much, of anything like, oh man, this is great. I always got that. Doesn't use time wisely. Has so much potential. Could do so much better. That would be the general consensus on my report cards.
Were there certain subjects that you liked more than others?
Science, I guess, as a child. Then along the line, of course, anything to do with music, there was like, I believe, a contemporary class or two where you could bring in music, and things like that. So of course I wanted to, and then along their lines, of course, picking up and playing the guitar, and then of course the gradual stereotypical thing of getting together with other like-minded souls and playing music on a collaborative basis, and then from there, of course, trying to get a band together and doing all that. Yeah.
So you jammed by yourself in the bedroom or so,
Oh,
and then,
sure,
you
yeah.
met some other friends.
Oh, yeah, oh,
and did
yeah,
you
yeah.
form some bands in high school?
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, very much so. And
Party gigs, actual gigs,
party, yeah, things like that. Play bars, and then also I was able to get a bit of pickup work. There was always a guy or two around that would book gigs but didn't have a band, and then when the gig came up, he'd call this guy or that guy, and somewhere along the line, a couple of the older 30-somethings, weren't available. So, hey, get that kid,
you were gun
bring
for
him
hire
here.
from time to time.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
So I learned, it was a very enriching experience where you have to learn to play music you might not be that familiar with. So you learn how to fake it, per se.
Right. Improvise.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's also got to be really motivating.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, because you got to keep an eye on, Yeah, so definitely doing that. I remember playing in a very low-key bands like that, and I remember even playing gigs where places like my mom and dad would go to, and that was a real being 16, 17 and playing, and there's mom and dad and their friends all having a good time. And
were they encouraging?
Oh yeah, very much so. Oh yeah, they loved that. They thought that was just the be all end all there.
Right.
So
you're lucky that way, because that's not always the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it was I guess the only thing that I showed any kind of motivation or interest in. That not that it was going to be a career choice or anything like that, but at least it was something that I enjoyed doing. So yeah.
So the first band that you saw live was they were called the Shoes, and then the Generators, and finally settled on the name Kicks.
Yeah, I did get to see them quite a bit.
Yeah. And was that the first concert?
No, it wasn't really a concert. It was more seeing the predecessors of all that, playing in bars which I would play at later on. Back then, there wasn't the internet, of course. There wasn't other than putting a tape or a record and listening to it and then trying to replicate it, that was pretty much there wasn't Guitar Pro, there wasn't YouTube or things like that where you could learn to play anything like that. So the other way was, of course, going to see local bands play and watching the guitar player. And, always did that and always will, just to see what he's doing. And one of those bands was, I can't remember the name offhand, but it was, members of Kicks,
right.
From back that were from the vicinity.
The Maryland area?
Yeah, exactly. Western Maryland area, yeah. So that was, I guess, one of the few instances where, like, okay, seeing from the pre-beginnings all the way through, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could watch TV, you might be able to record something and play it back and play it back, but other than that, it was live.
Yeah, exactly.
And you had to capture it.
Right.
Would you approach bands ever?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I have to find out, like, okay, what are they playing? What are you doing to do that? Like I said, there wasn't, like, where you could stream something and, like, there's how it's done.
Right.
No, you had to sit and watch and learn. Yeah.
So Deep Purple's Burn was the first record you bought.
That was the first record I bought with my own money for my first job.
Okay. What was the first job?
Working as a busboy in a department store restaurant.
Like Hex?
Grants. Yeah, and that was like at 14, 15. Yeah. So that was like a really better, and since they had mind you, came from a small town, but there was in the department store I worked at was a record section, so I got my pay, and what did I do? Oh, wow!
Went straight down and bought Deep Purple's Burn.
Sure,
so
yeah.
Do you listen to the radio? There was a rock radio station in Maryland.
There was little to none. It was top 40 and whatnot.
Okay.
So, and there again, what would have to do is get your little cassette tape recorder and put the microphone up to and record your favorite songs so you could listen to it.
Right. So Deep Purple's Burn, and then you found out later that they had better records later on that you purchased. But that's not a bad record for the first one you purchased.
Yeah, but it was the Mark III lineup.
My first record that I bought was NXS Kick.
Wow. Okay.
So how do you feel about that, Steve?
I mean, not something I can imagine somebody would have as their first record, but I guess. Yeah.
Why? What's the name? Tell me about the name.
It was just for me at the time. It was like, okay, I could be a T-shirt shop, I could be a bicycle shop, I could be whatever, and it was still as long as you maintain that brand. The one thing that seemed to be always current was, especially shortly after I opened, is all the digital compact disc, things like that, stores that popped up everywhere, and they would all have something to do with compact discs in the name of their store, which seemed to be a really smart thing to do at the time. But if you were to think 20 years later, 15 years later, it was like, who would go in there? All they got to sell was CDs.
So but I don't understand why the name Skinnies.
Well, that was just a universal name.
Okay.
In other words, it didn't,
It's not a reference to you or to a family or to a pet or to somebody.
No.
It's just Skinnies.
No. So, and there again, it was just, like I said, it could be, T-shirts, it could be drumsticks, it could be guitar cables, whatever. It doesn't matter.
You're not limiting yourself by.
So sure, he put records at the end because that's truly what it was.
Sure. So you got the store, you bought the store, the inventory was the inventory.
Yeah. And then change it up and build up. Of course, 6 months, less than a year later is when all chain stores announced that they were removing vinyl from the inventory and replacing it with nothing but CDs across the board. So all of a sudden, I had a record store that was like, huh? All you have in here is records? What the hell? Got no reason to come back.
What changes did you make to the store once you purchased
Just bringing in more records that had a personal appeal.
Such as?
More punk rock stuff and things like that. Because there really wasn't, any stores around. We'd have to travel to Plan 9 up in Richmond or something like that to find any really cool records.
Did you feel like were there people coming in and asking for things that you didn't have?
It was just a gradual build-up and everything like that.
Right.
As far as that goes. And it still is.
What was Norfolk like or Tidewater like in 1987?
Well, like I said, it was pretty cool as far as, considering where I came from, such a desolate area during my, teenage years. It was like, my God, there's like concerts and wrestling matches and cool shows to go to.
Live music scene.
Yeah, exactly. So, Hampton Boulevard was, quite alive.
Local bands, national acts.
But take your pick, yeah, both, yeah. So you had, King's Head Inn. You had, since ODU was there was what you had known as stereotypical college bars, and there were, some of them that fit in, and some of them that, were like, wow, this is more of a locals place.
Right.
So going to like Friar Tuck's or King's Head Inn or the Corner, which opened up shortly thereafter, and was I'm all about more about punk rock and the like.
Right.
So right during the midst of all that's when the store thing fell into my lap, and try to take that.
What was downtown like then? Downtown being like Granby
was
Street.
like where I went to buy magazines with the covers ripped off of them they sell you for a cheaper amount, which I later found out from having a store how that worked. You were given credit, so rather than mailing the whole magazine back, you tear off the front cover and mail that, and then the magazine company would give you credit. So they were supposed to be thrown away. If you ever read the fine print in any paperback,
if you purchase this and the cover is moved,
right? And then it's like now that made sense. Right. Then it made sense,
right?
So there was like 2 or 3 stores that sold, stuff like that. But the whole time I'd be in there digging through and finding, like eerie and creepy magazine comics and stuff like that. I notice all day long people walking in there getting packs of cigarettes and maybe some Skin magazines.
I have a picture in our living room of Granby Street and the Norva in, I don't know, like 1940. And it looks like fucking New York City. I mean, there's people like with like,
well, it
there's
was
a
ghost
trolley,
town.
and it was like,
it was a ghost town. There were a couple. There was the Goldies, which was like the Skin, the Peep show shop.
Yes.
That was my first. I'm like, what the hell is this? You put money into you put a quarter into this thing and look like a Viewmaster style, and get to see 2 minutes of a Skin flick. And that was like, huh? They can get away with this? How?
Right.
But
that's got a little New York City vibe to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the kind of things that went on down there.
Yeah. Well, that's a Navy. It's a
and there again,
country.
but there wasn't much. It was pretty desolate, very desolate.
I read that Eddie Pierce of the M80s may have been the first person to purchase the record.
He was my first customer.
What was the record?
Oh, geez. A ZZ Top, Rio Grande Mud.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah. I think. It might be.
So you were talking about how so how long in 1987, 88, the transition to CDs really came on? So you didn't have a whole...
Yeah. So all of a sudden, my investment was like, oh, wow, this was not a good idea. Did
you keep selling records out of complacency or laziness, or you just didn't know what the hell to do, or was it? Did you kind of have an idea that there may be a resurgence as there is now?
No idea of a resurgence whatsoever. It was like, oh wow, if we want to stay with the times and want to be relevant, guess what? Got to make changes.
Right.
But that was the business side of me, thinking. But then oh my God, I don't want to give up records. This is so near and dear to me. So we kept them.
Was it scary?
What?
Was that scary?
Very. Yeah. I mean, there I was, a year, not even a year, 2 years into what I thought would be, I don't think I really thought of it being an end career, but it seemed to be a very fun thing to do at the time. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, wow, this is not going to work. Not at all. And there's where, like I said, doing the record conventions on weekend, and then coming back with the money made from that to like buy CDs. And then there were people that would show up at these conventions that would have cheaper CDs, cheaper than you could find them anywhere. And the whole time I wasn't privy to buying direct from any labels. That didn't happen until like maybe 7, 8, less than 10 years ago, when things were already at the pits.
Did you think about going strictly CD? Did you ever?
Well, that was like the majority of the sales. Just like now, I have a handful of people that come in and still buy CDs. And those people back at that time were the ones that sold me their records when I really didn't need them, and took them because they're good customers and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So you made do, and
Yeah.
you changed.
So sure, yeah, but it wasn't, buying records was not going to be a high priority as far as spending money.
I remember buying CDs. We had in Tower Records up where I grew up, and they came in the really long, skinny boxes.
Yep,
and then
long boxes.
The long boxes.
Somebody just bought a long box from me today. I had like a crate that I had stashed away, and they're to certain people, quite collectible. And this guy had paid me like $30 for like a Shotgun Messiah long box CD that I had like completely forgotten about. Then when I looked it up, like, oh wow. So I charged him below market price. He was a happy camper and left.
Why the fuck did they put them in such big boxes? Was it the artwork thing? They wanted to keep the artwork?
It was retaining the artwork. The fixtures, which all my fixtures I obtained from chain stores that went under, were meant to fit records in. So 2 long box CDs would fit in the same width space as a vinyl record.
So it was a display, an industry thing that the industry said, all right, well,
and also for shrinkage factor, because it's pretty easy to take like a CD and stuff that in your pocket or under your jacket. A long box, not so.
Oh,
But,
okay.
Yeah, so
it
was a combination of all those.
So it was an anti-theft thing.
It was a
Partially,
combination of both.
That's interesting.
And but it was always a big controversy all the way along about how ecologically wasteful they were and whatnot.
Well, it seemed weird because the CD, I don't remember if it was at the bottom or the top of the box, but I remember there's just this sort of long...
It would be at the bottom, if I recall.
Yeah.
And the artwork,
would run the
whole gamut. Yeah, sometimes they would be, they would show the actual CD, and they would be like in a plastic clear container or something like that, if I recall. But it was supposedly... we'll save so much money when we eliminate these. It was quite a controversy for many, many years about the long boxes. Anyway, when they finally eliminated them, prices only went up.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't like, wow, we were supposed to save a couple bucks because all this discarded paper that's not needed.
But then I felt like they came in those large plastic...
The braces.
The braces.
Well, then, of course, when they started showing up and just shrink wrapped, it was like, well, guess what? All the fixtures were made like to fit, either one album or 2 CDs. So having to buy those braces, and they were like $1.50 a piece.
And that was something that as the proprietor, you had.
Yeah, I had to come up. It was up to me. Yeah. And they're again done for display purposes. So
and anti-theft, probably.
And that too.
Because those CDs are basically like the same size of like the back of your jeans.
Exactly. Yeah, you can fit. They'd fit perfectly in a back jean pocket. Yeah.
So Skinnies in the '80s did a pretty good job of selling local music and
to some
promoting.
Extent, there was never, there were a few things that did okay, but there just never was, what I would consider, enthusiastic response from the public.
And that's certainly still true today.
It's even more true today. I mean, it's first of all, anybody can come up with $500 to $1,000 to put out a CD. The problem is, a lot of bands don't understand wholesale retail. So what they're selling it at a show for is not the price that they're going to sell to for me, because I have to resell it. It just doesn't seem to comprehend very well. So, and then competing, like, okay, well, who's going to pay $10 for a CD like nowadays when I can sell you a Rush CD for $5?
Right.
How are you going to compete with that with a band they've never heard? It's
strange, and I guess it's unfortunate because I do feel like it would be a pretty nice marriage of the two.
It would be, yeah.
But it's strange that it's just never really been the thing.
No, not at all. I mean, there were a few things that did very well and held their own, but all in all, there was so many never ever sold. It was so sad, but there wasn't any proper promotion by either the artists. They would break up. The bottom line to it goes to show that, other than their friends, their immediate relatives, everybody that they know, would buy the CD. The public doesn't care.
Right.
And this area being so transient, be it college or military, well, no matter where that person's from, they have their hometown band that they're interested in. Doesn't mean anything here. Yeah.
You've had some national famous people come in the store over the
yeah,
years.
throughout, yes.
Will you tell the Morrissey story? I know you've told it a lot, but would you tell Morrissey came in?
Yeah, he did. Yes.
Can you speak on that?
Well, what happened was, and that was at the first location.
He was playing a show in Norfolk.
He was playing at the Chrysler Hall.
Okay.
Okay, and early part of the day, this guy comes in, and I could tell he was from a band of some sort. And when I spoke, he had an English accent.
You could tell he was in a band because the dress, the
his
carriage,
demeanor
his
and everything
carriage.
like
Yes,
that. Yeah, and then we got to talking, and like, oh, so you just played at the King's Head Inn last night? Oh, no, I'm playing drums for Morrissey. Like, oh, really? The guy from the Smiths, huh? That's cool. And he was, I think, digging through 45s, so he was really into that. So he just dug around, and he says, man, this is great. And he says, I got to tell the other guys about this place, I said, hey, that'd be cool. Yeah, why not? You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, used to seeing lip service of all sorts all the time. So, okay, that's neat. An hour or two later, this entourage comes in, and it's Saturday, 2, 3 o'clock, whatever, So there's probably 7 or 8 people shopping around the store and everything like that. And this guy, Morrissey, comes in, and with the other band members who are all scattering around, like, ooh, look at it. So showing, being a real person.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So he waltzes in, looks around. There was a magazine, a freebie magazine that he was on the cover. And one of the band members says, oh, look at that. And he, like, wow, sheesh. Anyhow, I knew enough about him that he was heavily into the New York Dolls and things like that, and figured, okay. Usually when you meet a famous musician and bring up something that they're really enthusiastic about.
So did you practice in your mind, like once the drummer came in earlier in the day?
No, because I didn't think any more of it. And then like, oh, wow,
Okay.
he wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
He really did. They really did come back, I might have made like some kind of like Johnny Thunders comment to him or something like that.
Yeah.
And there just got a, and it seemed like, okay, nothing. And then like, I guess they were all still digging around, and he decided to waltz out. And and all the people that were in here, no one gave a shit. They were either metalheads or they could give a crap about like the singer from the Smiths.
Yeah.
So that would have been, I guess, a bit demeaning to his fragile ego.
Sure.
That nobody came up like, oh, please let me touch your shirt sleeve or something like that. So I said, hey, when anybody well-known comes in here, they always will sign something, and put it up on the wall. Would you? No, I don't think so.
Wow.
I said, oh, well, have a good day, pal.
Thurston Moore
Thurston
came in
Moore was
and
very cool. He came in twice. Whenever the Sonic Youth was in town, he would come in and just dig, and, truthfully, he would buy records that I didn't think anyone else would be interested in.
Like what?
Just obscure, jazz records and stuff like that. I think if I recall, later on I remember reading that him and a partner of his were opening up a store in New York, and they wanted to have, I guess, the most obscure, holier than thou records they can find,
Right.
Or just stuff that basically would be unmarketable. At the time, Goo was out and so he would have been doing probably as financially well as he could be.
Did you ever follow up on that to see if he actually?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe it did happen, for a year or two. So he would come in and pick up, and of course it was all stuff. Nothing that was like, triple figure records or anything like that. So it was just like, wow, yeah, you want to buy? That's great. What he ended up doing with them. There again, this would have been pre-eBay or anything like that. So anyhow.
Yeah. And then Danzig came in?
Danzig came in, that was fairly recent. He came in unannounced, and
21st Street store?
over here.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, this one here just a couple years ago. And, so it wasn't anything that like, oh, wow, Danzig's, usually what would occur would be like, say if it'd be a Norva, show, somebody from the Norva would arrange, like, okay, they want to go to a record store, so Steve, it's okay, we're going to bring, sure, come on by, or something like that. But with him, he just, wandered in, and there again to do what I call a quality control check. They want to make sure that their music, T-shirts, is prominently displayed, and things like that. Yeah.
So you think as artists that they have an idea, or their management has an idea of to where their merchandise is and sort of where certain things are?
Well, the ones that, guys like him and or Danny Filth, who also made a couple trips in, they were they were sharp businessmen.
Right.
So they were making, like I said, a personal check to see, and they wanted, and they'd even do a count, like they do a count.
Right.
And of course, while they're at it, they, if they could find something that they wanted for themselves, all the better. Yeah.
How do you find out about different artists and musicians, particularly if it's maybe not a type of music or genre that you listen to, in terms of getting records in the store? Like, how do you find out about
what back then? Well, back then, every label had like a staff, people working for them, that was their job. New artist development, is what it was called. So they had all, every label had, even though we didn't deal directly with the labels, there were reps who would come down and visit, who would call, because, there wasn't emails or anything like that. Push, like whatever it was.
with like promo copies?
Promo copies, yes. Yeah, posters, everything, just the amount of money that was being spent. Like I said, it's really ironic, that all the money that these labels would spend on sending, for the most part, very unmarketable, releases that you couldn't even give them. And then posters and everything like that would go with it. It was just astounding. And then when that, that all has, of course, long since dried up. But I always thought, geez, why don't you just deal direct with me so at least I can buy Black Sabbath CDs from you instead of all this other crap that nobody's interested in. Occasionally there'd be, something along the line that would be, of interest, but far and few between. Keep in mind the people that worked as these reps were also music enthusiasts. They weren't bean counters.
Okay.
They were not accountants. They were people like me, and I knew plenty of folks back then who, would work in a record store or something like that, and then move on, to get a job as an intern with a label, and then be a rep and everything like that.
So they knew their shit.
So yeah, so it was, so if you studied hard and, and all that, you'd eventually get a cool job like that.
So you said that Record Store Day was, and I'm quoting, and you can tell me if I get it wrong, created by the record industry to get people to buy things that are intentionally limited.
Correct.
So is Record Store Day misnamed?
Well, I mean, I guess it's as good a name as any, but it's that
kind of lends it to sound like it's more like Record Industry Day.
That would be more appropriate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Would be, major label.
How would you like to see it change?
Just eliminate completely, and I mean, it's all well and good to have like limited, releases and things like that, and allow first of it to be evenly distributed between stores like mine, so that it's not a matter of the amoebas and the larger independent stores who could buy up 1,000 copies of something, leaving everyone else out in the lurch.
So the issue isn't so much of having a record store day one day a year. It's more that it's the limited pressings are sort of your beef.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just
but not everyone gets the same number of copies of the.
No, I mean I've come to realize it's like this. I mean, it doesn't take common sense, and there again, this is the accountant speaking. Like, well, if you put out a record and make a couple thousand copies of it and it gets bought up, that's cool for the fans and whatnot and everything out there. They got a limited copy, but wait a minute. Didn't you just cut off your nose, realizing that you could have like made this record indefinitely and people will always buy it instead of just those 2,000 that one day? And then let alone all the probably 30% of them are going to be bought up by flippers who are going to sell them for aftermarket price. There again, once depriving, the dedicated fans who only want that record for the sole purpose of enjoying it. not like for the purpose of flipping it.
So I wanted to, you don't have to answer any of this. I was doing some research and I came across, there's a lot of message boards, vinyl message boards and things like that. And I came across one message board. I didn't look at it. I just looked at one.
Right.
And I wrote down some of the stuff that some people had said about the store and about you.
Right.
I'm just going to sort of just run through them and you can just tell me your take on it.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
There's a mix of stuff. So one person said when you worked there, you signed a contract saying that you won't reveal any of his secrets.
Correct.
That's
That's
true.
true. That's
Okay.
very true. At the time when I was allowed the privilege of being able to afford employees, I didn't need someone to go work for me and then go somewhere else and reveal my trade secrets.
Okay. So
I
they're
worked
like,
up a lot of time of making good contacts, that other places don't have the privilege to. And I don't need that being revealed.
I wasn't sure when they said secrets if they were talking about like personal secrets
Yeah, basically like, don't buy that go this place. That's where Steve went, and he got the best deal. So it was mostly because of that.
Ask him about weekend warrior punk rockers.
People that dress up, particularly military sector, that would dress up, and paint their hair and on the weekends and whatnot. Yeah, yeah.
Gave me a bagel once. That's great. That's awesome.
When I was next
door
door
to-
to, I would get, excess, so I'd always say, hey, have a bagel. Here you go. Yeah.
Went on a 10-minute rant about credit card surcharges. Does that sound right?
That is, no, it would have been more like an hour long. Yeah.
But you use credit. You take
Sure.
credit cards.
It's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And finally, after years of fine tuning and having to bicker around with that, I've got it pretty well under control as far as like having the best competitive rates. But back then, when I was a small business, this would have been the same time as like when major labels were not interested. Okay, I was a small independent, store with no really potential of growth that a credit card industry company is going to be interested in. Like, oh, let's sign this place up.
The debit card is worse for you. Is
No,
that
the
right?
debit
Is it
used
better.
now is way better.
Okay.
A debit card only costs me like under a quarter, no matter how much you spend. It's a swipe fee.
Okay.
And where a credit card, you pay the swipe fee and a percentage of the sale.
And Apple Pay, you're doing.
I'm set up with that.
Okay.
I've got
Yeah.
that set up now too. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Ask him about his Marilyn Manson connection. Here I am doing that.
Wow. I can't think of any. Nothing comes to mind.
He once yelled, quote, "Quiet, Motorhead is on."
I'm sure somebody was speaking loudly or making some obstructive noise, and they were, yeah.
There are also various theories about your haircut.
Glad to explain it.
So one has to do with the surgery and
This completely.
yeah.
This after I had my procedure, which I survived, and I'm here talking to you.
Yes.
15 years, almost 15 years later, 14 years. All because of all the different treatments that I had, the hair just never grew back on this side of my head. Simple as that. To this day, it still hasn't.
So you had the surgery because you had to have it in
I
order.
had an abnormal growth of blood vessels in my left side of my brain.
Right.
And it would swell up, cause me to have seizures. Happen all the time. And it became, something I had to deal with. It made me very, very unemployable. I couldn't drive for about 10 years. Put me in a very, I was heavily, heavily medicated. And I had to take A, B, and C medication at this time and whatnot. If they overlapped, I would be overtoxified. It would cause, mood swings, things like that. And it was just a general, and as I got older and older, it was definitely told, well, the chance of you living, and when you have one of those seizures, you're not going to get back up. So carrying that around definitely is not very positive and can put you on a very, Yeah.
So having the surgery eliminated medication, eliminated seizures
Completely.
But
Yeah.
and it was pretty high risk in terms of
Very,
So
It was like I was told before they tried different procedures. One was shooting super glue like up to the area through my and sort of shutting off. The other one been like putting me in a halo and shooting lasers that would decimate the growth and make it shrivel away. Okay, neither of those worked. So the next, the only step left was a procedure known as craniotomy, where they cut me open and yanked that piece of my brain out.
And was that a local procedure?
That
You
was
did it-
done, yeah, right down the street. Yep.
Okay. Which hospital, if I can ask?
Right here.
DePaul?
No, not DePaul. Centera.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got dogs. So is this Maddie?
This is Maddie right here with me today. Yep.
And Putty is no more?
Putty is no more.
Sorry
Yeah,
about
he's
that.
gone. Yeah, Putty left. He managed to make it to all 3 locations though.
You've got a Gibson SG
Yeah, that
behind
is
you.
One SG right there.
How long have you played guitar?
I've since I started at Grants when I was 14.
Okay,
Yeah.
long time.
That was the other thing spending money on besides buying records was starting to be able to buy guitars. Yeah.
You still play every day?
Not every day, but almost.
Do you find yourself going on YouTube a lot to learn how to play, or do you still kind of listen and try to?
Well, I'll listen at first, and then okay, try to pick out a basic, at least a couple open chords or something like that I
Right.
can and then if it's like learning an intricate run or riff or something like that, I'm like, okay, let me do either Guitar Pro or YouTube, because there's I don't care what song it is, somebody has sat down and here's how we play this song.
Ultimate Guitar
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
.com is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you playing in bands still? You played in a band out of nowhere.
Yeah, I did that
couple
for a
years
while. Did that. That was the last stable working cover band that I had, and we would still be at it. But the bass player singer had a midlife crisis and took off and left his wife, his kid, his job, his home, and everything for
Other things.
Yeah, for a female fan.
I
Yeah,
see.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
hey.
Yeah. Okay. And that happened a little over a year ago, and myself or the drummer have never heard from him since.
Wow.
Yeah, just took off and left everything behind. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
You ever been married? Do you date? Can I ask that?
I whenever possible, but it's pretty much just married to this right here.
You've never been married?
No.
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 But you date?
Yes, whenever possible. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
We'll move on. What are your hobbies? You like classic horror film?
Very much. Very much.
memorabilia?
Yes. I got monster models and things like that. The last batch I managed to still save in the box and have on display rather than building the models.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have them on display at your home, like in
Yeah.
a
Yeah. There's
curio
a
cabinet?
I think a cabinet in there that has all the Oh yeah.
Lit.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Where do you find that? Do you go to?
I mean, back then
online
you used to
and-
just be able to buy them at toy stores and things like that, And ones like when I was a kid, I guess I bought them at the same department store that I ended up working at.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still buy them? Do you still?
No,
are you still on the hunt?
no, not like I used to be. No, that obsessiveness, I guess just sort of gradually just sort of, weaned away from all of it, because it was, there again, an expense
Right.
that, I just try to cut down.
Sure.
And when I moved 2 years ago and got my co-op, there was a lot of scaling down I had to do. The majority of my record collection is back there, gradually being sifted out of here as need be. So, yeah, it's just there again, a matter of survival.
What do you do when you get home?
Like tonight, what I'm going to do is go to the rec center and work out for, a little while, and then I'll fix some dinner, and then make sure, my 4-footed daughter's taken care of.
Yeah.
Maybe do a walk with her, and of course, and then fix a meal, and then watch TV.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Very normal,
Yeah.
mundane, boring life.
What artist has sold the most copies, you think, in all 3 locations? Has there been one band that you think has sold the most records in Skinnies?
Probably Bad Brains Eye Against Eye would be a long time and still seller.
What do you attribute that to?
Good timeless record.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
East
So,
Coast connection a little bit?
Perhaps I guess the other thing would be like, say, either of the Minor Threat records. But I guess it would all be classic, early 80s punk rock.
Right.
Stuff that people still listen to that sells, in here all the time. Yeah.
Are there things that you wish you had done in the store that you feel like it's too late to do?
No, I like to say, as things were done, if it was a need for it, I try not to jump on it from an exploitionary manner, but No, I can't. I can't really say. No.
When vinyl's back, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that? What year did you kind of get? Was there more foot traffic at some point? Just sort of all of a sudden, was it gradual? Did you kind of feel it before we all knew about it?
Well, first, like I said, when all those digitally compact disc stores that were everywhere popped up, all disappeared pretty close to the same time. All the chain stores started shutting down or scaling
Waxy
down.
Maxis,
Yeah, exactly.
Tower.
When Tower shut, all that was like in the same, couple year period of time. Then it was a matter like, wow, okay, there isn't anything popping up to take its place. It just wasn't a need or apparent for people desire for wanting music stores. So, and that's where the diversification that I had built up.
With the guitar strings and buttons, T-shirts,
everything, you name it, just
right.
Whatever, just something for people to spend money. If it was something, give them a reason not to spend. Yeah.
Do you ever think about doing an online store component?
I did that for a while.
You did.
Okay, when there was people here working, and was all right, but then it became more and more competitive. And nowadays, not to be defeatist, but I don't care what it is, somebody out there selling it cheaper because they don't have the overhead of a store.
Right.
And I got to notice that on the website, the only thing people were wanting to buy were unusual, rare things that they couldn't find anywhere else. And it became like, well, why do I want to sell this to some guy in Nevada that I've never met before and never will, when there will be somebody that walks in that store and that'll buy that record, and it'll be like, wow, look what I found at Skinnies.
What's the future hold for Skinnies?
Just, more podcasts.
What would 2015 Steve tell 1987 Steve?
Hoard away all those dumb records that you thought no one would ever want because now people come in and buy them.
It's coming back.
Yes.
Right.
Because, I mean, when I'm not saying dumb, but records are like, Hotel California, Fleetwood Mac, who the hell is going to want those? Get that out of here. This shop's too cool to have anything like that. So, and now, these days, it's those ordinary records that new buyers want to get. And every store I talk to, it's the same thing. How long that'll last? Probably not too much longer. And then I'll be back to selling only cool records like as I once wanted to. Yeah.
Steve, I really appreciate the time.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been good.
My pleasure. Thank
Congratulations
you so much.
on 30 years.
Well, not yet. We're working
Two
on it.
more.
Let's get to 29 at the end of the year, and then we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you've been listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. To hear archived episodes, go to soundcloud.com/QAAPC or subscribe to the show on iTunes. For exclusive content, including upcoming shows, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, follow the show on Instagram at instagram.com/QAAPC.